I'm the owner of a Sandler Performance Center here in Fort Wayne, Indiana. We have an office in South Bend at Notre Dame, which I visited yesterday. It's still there, which is good. I haven't done much in person there, but we will be firing that back up soon because there's a subtle demand for, working our way towards in-person training again. So looking forward to that day when we're able to do that. I'm joined by two handsomely devilish gentlemen. Oh, wait, saintly gentlemen. They're one or the other. I'll let them introduce themselves. John, go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm John Vanderslice. I have the Sandler Performance Center here in southern New Jersey, near Philadelphia, where I have to say there is not a subtle appetite for in-person training, but that's okay. We've had a pretty rough go of it here on the East Coast, but we're making the virtual thing work well, and all is good. So thanks for having me today.
You bet. Thanks for being here. Timothy.
Tim Berry. I'm the owner of the Sandler Performance Center here in Fort Worth, Texas. We're 30 miles from Dallas. And in spite of the fact that Texas is its own country, basically, there is not really a overly high demand to return to in-person training. So we've been executing for results and delivering high quality training remotely. And so here we are, happy to be here again today. So off we go.
It's interesting. I do think this is our new norm. I hear people talking about getting back to normal. I do believe this is it. I think the appetite is subtle, but many of us are making investments in delivering a better virtual or hybrid training experience. So I find that interesting. But that is not what we're here to talk about today. We're actually here to talk about mastering our 30-second commercial, or our elevator pitch, as it was once known. So as always, what we like to do is have you guys get your chat fingers warmed up. We're going to throw a question into chat. Would love you guys to engage with us there. So have you recently or ever heard a quote unquote elevator pitch that has compelled you to willingly spend more time talking to a sales professional? Tim, John, I'll ask you guys that question, put you on the spot right away.
I didn't, when you asked me this earlier, nothing came to mind, but when I actually read it and heard you say it, I do remember distinctly, and it wasn't that long ago. It was 1997. And honestly, I do mean that. And I'm sure there's been some since then, but, I'll tell you how good it was. I remember the guy's name going way back then. We owned a pretty large family business at the time, and we were expanding. We had just bought a new building in Mount Laurel, New Jersey, and I wanted to get a new phone system. And I had a fellow come over from Lucent Technologies by the name of Mike Foglia. Lucent Technologies probably won't even ring a bell with a lot of people because they no longer in existence.
Right. And
when the guy introduced himself, he just did a masterful job where it wasn't the same old, here's the big company I'm with. This is what we do. Here's my brochure. Look at all the luggage I brought with me.
Right.
He was great. He drew me in. And the thing that really impressed me was once we got past the 30-second commercial, he knew a ton about his competitors' products and was able to talk about them in a way that was not at all negative, but highlighted why his was a better solution.
That's excellent. And I think that speaks to, it's sad that it was 23 years ago, right? But it speaks to how memorable, something like that is. I mean, we hear things that are not so good day in and day out. John Bentley commented in chat, his one that he recalled was from the early 2000s. So, upwards of 20 years ago. I can't recall, I wrote this question, and this has been on my mind ever since we, talked about this session, but I can't think of one that's really caught my attention. I hear lots that are terrible, right? Lots that are terrible. Tim, I don't know if you had a comment on this.
Yeah, actually, I've got a great one. I heard one less than 60 days ago, and it was a waiter in a restaurant in a a corporate part of Fort Worth, Texas, and it was a high-end steakhouse. There weren't many people in it because while you can have dine-in, seating currently, it just wasn't really packed. We went a little bit early, and I was with a client, and the waiter came to the table and said, "You know what? As opposed to what I'm interested in is what kind of flavors do you like? What tastes do you have?" And it was a fascinating reverse, because typically in a high-end restaurant, somebody's going to come to the table and tell you what the specials of the day are or whatever, and they'll start vomiting out the neat things on their special menu. And this person came up there, and maybe it was because there weren't many people in there, but he said, what flavors interest you the most? And we ended up having this probably 5-minute conversation, which again, for a professional professional wait staff, you don't usually have 5 minutes to yutz around in this, but it was extraordinary, because he made me feel like he was building the menu for me, and it was just fascinating. So interestingly enough, his elevator pitch was beautiful.
That's excellent. That's excellent. I love that. Absolutely love that. Okay. So as and we've got some great comments in the chat, by the way. So a lot of no's, several yeses that were memorable. So those of you, Ann and Clarissa, I'd love, feel free to share with us in the chat. You typed yes pretty quick. I'm assuming it's not your own elevator pitch, but which it may very well be. They both have excellent elevator pitches, but curious if you remember the exact one like John and Tim do. But most elevator pitches, and this is the problem, I think with the elevator pitch, is that it's all about the salesperson. So they show up and it's all about I, me, 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 me. And that, I think, is the first problem with the quote unquote elevator pitch. Thoughts on this cartoon, this perspective? Am I off base here, gentlemen?
I'm going to let Tim go because I don't have my glasses on. I can't read it.
Yeah, it's John, this is what you and I probably have heard 10,000 times in when other salespeople give us sales pitches. It's about me, 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 me.
Oh, that's all it says. Okay,
That's
cool.
all it says.
That's all it says.
Okay.
Yeah, I think, go ahead, John.
No, I agree. I mean, I think it's, I remember when I was a young guy starting out in sales, I didn't really get any sales training. I was fortunate enough that my sales territory was North Jersey and New York City. So made it a little extra spicy, but I thought once I tell them all about the wonderful things we do, how we do it, how long we've been in business, and then the coup d'etat would be to show them the beautiful color pictures. How could they not buy from me? And didn't really work out so well. So right. I do think we take this stance that we are there to, it's kind of like, hey, I'm from the government, I'm here to help, right? And it's like, okay, go away. But, it's not at all about us. People don't care about what we do, how we do it, where we went to school. They only care about the problem that they have that we're able to solve.
That's right. Yeah. And when I first saw this cartoon, I thought, my gosh, was somebody sketching me in the early part of my career? Because I would show up and I would information you to death until you basically raised your hand and said, all right, I give up. I'll buy whatever you got. Just get me out of here. And I think that's one of the first challenges, right? We make it about ourselves. Couple golden rules, I think, that are often missed from a sales perspective. And John and Tim, I know we've talked a lot about these, right? And you kind of just referenced this, John. Number one, the sales call has always, always, always got to be about the person in front of us. I think most sales professionals fail to realize this, right? They make it about them, their value proposition, their unique solution, et cetera. And that's not what people care about. People care about their own problems and challenges. And then they care about your solution, but only if they understand what's in it for them. and there is a very specific order to that. It's always about the person in front of them, and it's our job to connect the dots back to our problem or solution. Thoughts, comments on that?
I think a real simple thing for me, and I tell this to all my clients just to help orient mindset, is think like a doctor.
Yeah.
I mean, you're there to help. You're there to solve a problem, to figure out if you can help. I mean, you would not go into a doctor's office and he wouldn't start out the conversation by saying, well, before we begin, let me talk to you about where I went to school, how I did my residency, none of that, right? I mean, we'd walk out the door. So I think if you position yourself and think in terms of, I'm a doctor and I'm here to gather information and then figure out, can I help? I think it's just a great mindset to go in. So you don't start with that me. Let me tell you how great I am. Let me take it from the position of I'm here to help, but let me understand first.
Absolutely. 100%. Question for you guys. Do you guys know the history of the elevator pitch? Where that term originated from, or?
I know some of the rumors about it, but I haven't really studied the origin, where it actually came from.
John, you're probably around when the elevator pitch was.
You know,
Sorry, I couldn't
to quote my friend Michael Norton, I am so old. I was around when the Dead Sea was just sick.
I love Michael Norton.
Yeah.
And Tim, I think you're right. They're rumors or stories, but it comes from one of two places, right? The movie industry, where, you know, writers that were pitching screenplays would try to catch somebody in an elevator. Now you have a captive audience and you have 30 seconds to 2 minutes to give a compelling story of why you should buy my screenplay. The other story about the elevator pitch comes from actually the Otis Elevator Company, right? In selling in big city high rises, right? You get them in the elevator, you give them your business proposition, and hopefully by the time you get to whatever floor they're going to, you've sold your concept or idea or product to that person. Regardless, I think that notion of the elevator pitch doesn't really work, right? Because it puts you in the position of me, my product, why I'm so good, or the company is so good, et cetera. So when we say elevator pitch, we're really talking about a 30-second commercial, and the 30-second commercial has some specific uses, really one specific use. And I'll ask you guys, we train this all the time. What is the purpose of the 30-second commercial for the most part?
Yeah, I think, it's essentially to figure out if there's a reason for you to talk at a deeper level. It's almost so you sell the appointment in the 30-second commercial. And if there's not a reason, then just split up. Then don't beat a dead horse. So
Yeah.
that's what it is. That's what I teach my folks is you're not selling anything. You're trying to figure out if there's a compelling reason for you to keep talking further at a deeper level.
100%. I'd say the only exception to that would be as if I'm in the one call close business, right? So if I'm selling you water softener, for example, right? I have one opportunity to come into the home, then my 30-second commercial is to help me uncover problems, challenges, or what we call pain. But generally speaking, our 30-second commercial is to figure out if we should be talking at a deeper level and what we should likely be talking about from your perspective, not necessarily mine, if we believe that people only care about, what's in it for them or their own problems and challenges. John, you look like you were going to add something to that.
No. I think you're right on point. I mean, again, I think it's about, in Sandler, we talk about qualify hard, close easy. And I mean, this is where it starts, right? We're not a good fit for everybody. None of our businesses are. And we need to understand why people buy from us, the type of people we're looking for. And this initiates that conversation to say, hey, I'd love to know what you do. And these are some of the challenges that I deal with when I work with folks. Any of these things even on your radar screen, and if they say yes, you talk further. If they say no, absolutely not, then hey, nice meeting you, and you move on.
Right. Which is interesting, that concept of qualifying and disqualifying the opportunity. It's not something that necessarily we're talking about today, but just on a side tangent, if we can for a second, I see it I'm guessing you see it, sales professionals get really emotionally involved, as if I've got to sell this now. And we lose that ability to say, hey, if we're a fit, let's move it forward. If we're not, that's okay. Let's just call it a no and move on.
Mhm.
Right? I see a lot of sales professionals struggle with that one, which I think has them hanging on to this notion of, I got to sell this now, right? I got to show up and throw up and give you everything I can in a desperation attempt to try to sell you now, versus taking a methodical approach to qualifying and disqualifying this opportunity.
And if I could say, Jim, I think there's two reasons for that. If you showed up to me and that was a symptom that you had, that urgency to close quickly and got to get this one, two things I would lay money down on. You have a very skinny sales pipeline,
Yeah.
and you probably have more of a scarcity mentality than an abundance mentality. So the other mind hack, I think, besides being a doctor, is to think that you're independently wealthy and there's no one deal or 10 deals that's going to change your life. So that, just imagine how differently you'd approach an opportunity if you didn't need the money or you didn't need the sale. So a full pipeline and abundance mentality goes a long way.
Absolutely. 100%. So appreciate that. John, you kind of gave a high level outline, and the people listening may not have realized it, but I want to break down kind of what you said when you talked about your approach, for that initial conversation. From a 30-second commercial perspective, we train on the pattern interrupt. Share with everybody what's a pattern interrupt, John or Tim. What's a pattern interrupt from your perspective, and why would we want to use one?
Yeah, I think it's the pattern interrupt is just we get into our routines, and so for example, when you're beginning your 30-second commercial, it's important to interrupt that thought pattern or that expectation. And so a pattern interrupt is just something that you insert into the very beginning of your 30-second commercial that would like stop whatever intellectual mindset they have. Just get them to stop and go, whoa, hang on, I got to hear this because I didn't expect that. So something like a pattern interrupt that I would use is, hey, did I catch you at a bad time? Now, most of the time, what I hear in 30-second commercials is, hey, how you doing? Well, how you doing doesn't interrupt any pattern, because you hear that phrase 10,000 times a day. But when someone says, hey, I don't suppose I caught you at a bad time, the record scratches, the needle scratches across the record, and you have to stop and think, wait a minute, what did this person just ask me? And so
Yeah, it's different.
It's a different thought, and it stops you dead in your tracks.
Yeah, I think if I were to call John and say, hey, John, how you doing? Jim Wilcox here. He immediately knows it's a sales call, right? And the conditioned response to that is, if it's John, he's going to hang up on me, right? Other people might say, what do you got? Make it quick. I'm good, right? We get those type of conditioned responses. So we want to interrupt that pattern, right? That's I believe what you're saying, Tim.
Yeah,
Let's
absolutely.
interrupt that conditioned response. Yeah.
Absolutely.
John, do you have any examples of a good pattern interrupt you like to use?
Well, I might, but first let me apologize for hanging up on you this morning when you called to ask how I was doing. So pattern interrupt, again, exactly as Tim said, we get into patterns. You walk into a store, hey, can I help you? No, I'm sorry, just looking. It's a pattern that develops in our brain that tells us this is how we respond. So oftentimes at a networking event, for example, people will come up to me and say, hey, so John, tell me, what do you do? And, rather than firing back with, well, we do this, we do that, I'll typically say, gosh, I got to be honest with you, Jim, what I do is really not that exciting, but geez, tell me, what do you do?
Mm-hmm.
Because I want to understand their perspective, what they do. Then it allows me to answer in a way that might be more meaningful. So for me in a networking event, that's a pattern interrupt. On a phone call, to Tim's point, I may say, hey, am I getting you at a bad time? But then I will say something like, Jim, I'm just looking for a little bit of help, right? I'm looking for a little bit of help. That's another pattern interrupt, and you go forward, but it just breaks that pattern.
I like that, plays on a little bit of empathy and is a little bit engaging and draws people towards you. So the next step is one that can be used when we're outwardly prospecting, may not make sense in a networking event, but if I'm picking up the phone and calling somebody, I am never afraid to tell them what I'm up to. One of the things that will turn a prospect off more than anything is to try to hide the fact that we're making a prospecting call or a sales call, right? And it's largely ineffective. I think we do some things to ourselves. So if you think about the last slide, and I'm going to go back one slide, when we pick up the phone and we call, we often get ourselves into trouble from the first moment, right? By telling somebody or saying, hey, how you doing? Or, hey, it's Jim Wilcox with Sandler Training. Can I talk to you for a few minutes about what we do? Right? That tends to turn people off. We're responsible for that because we set ourselves up, for those conditioned responses of, I'm good, I'm busy, I got a guy, I got a gal, etc. Same thing here. If I call John up and I say, hey, John, not trying to sell you anything, just want to see if I can get a few minutes of time to understand your business, that's likely going to get me shut down pretty quick as well. Versus me saying, hey, John Jim Wilcox, right? Guessing the name means nothing to you. Listen, I'm making a prospecting call. If I could give you 30 seconds, tell you what it's about, welcome to A, hang up on me, B, if it's of interest, we can schedule some additional time. Still there, John? So I may do something like that, right? And that disarming honesty is something that I think is key. What are your thoughts on disarming honesty and actually telling them what you're up to?
No, I think it makes a lot of sense because, to tell somebody, say, hey, this is a cold call, but I'm just looking for a little bit of help here. Might not make any sense for us to keep talking. I think it is want to be honest. We don't want to be, we're not trying to manipulate people. We're not trying to trick people. We may have interrupted somebody's day. So I think that disarming honesty is important. And one thing that we know is that when we are disarmingly honest in this way, it's kind of doing something which is seemingly not in our best interest to do that. But the trust that it builds allows you to do other things that are in your best interest later, because you've developed that trust and you've started out from a place of honesty.
Absolutely. 100%. Step 3 then is relaying how we can help. And we tend to follow a specific kind of process from there. We want to introduce some sort of familiarity. So, Tim, when I'm talking with other CEOs, they tend to tell me ... Or John, CEOs that I speak with like to share things like, and we'll get into filling in the blanks in a minute, as I'm engaging with marketing directors like yourself, or even generically clients we've helped in the past, right, would tell you things like ... So that's the first part of sharing how we help people, which is very different than me leading with it. Let me tell you why I'm so good, or we're so good, or why the product's so good. The second part of this is to really tie adjectives to pain indicators. So what are other people in their situation feeling? And then what are the likely problems that we're solving? So for those of you listening, right, we want you to think about not only adjectives you can use, but on the pain indicator side, what are the problems you solve? So in our business, we deal with things like decreasing margins, lack of accountability, turnover in a sales capacity, for example. So we want to tie those together. Why do we want to tie those together?
Yeah, Jim, I think it's a great question. And what we're really trying to do is, as opposed to the contrast of showing up and throwing up on them, and this is massive, because what you're doing is you're painting a picture in their head about the types of people that come to you in the first place. Mm-hmm. And so when you use the adjectives like frustrated, concerned, irritated, worried, angry, and tired, those are pain, those are pain feelings. And if you tie those to the actual, things that you're product or service solves, then you can help themselves put themselves in that position where, yeah, okay, if you're talking to other people that are worried about decreasing margins and inability to service, then yeah, I run into those too. And so it gives you it builds the picture. It's a third party story, and it takes the pressure off of you saying, oh, look how great I am.
Absolutely. John, any additional thoughts, comments on that?
No, again, I think it makes a lot of sense. I mean, I think I think one place you really have to, where I see people miss it a lot is, and I'll ask people, I'll say, why does someone buy from you? And that's a good question. Maybe a little bit of homework for the people online. Write down 3 or 4 or 5 reasons why people buy from you. And I'll have people not sure. And maybe a simple question, but not an easy answer. The best way to find out is ask your clients.
Right.
What problems do I solve? And, we know that people make decisions for emotional reasons. So if you're a financial advisor and you say today, people are anxious that, they're not going to have enough money at retirement, or they're concerned about their child's education. These are real world things that they can relate to. So then when that next step comes, which Jim will talk about, you've now painted a picture for them to resonate on Tim's point that's very relative to them.
Absolutely. So once I've painted that picture, I then want to have some sort of call to action, keeping in mind that my purpose of the 30-second commercial for most all of us, right, is an extended meeting. Whether I extend it on the phone or we're going to set some time. I know our worlds and a lot of our clients' worlds, the idea is let's carve out a period of time in the very near future to talk about these things. And so when we tie it all together, it tends to sound like this. And John, I would ask, because I think you're very eloquent, right? Would you be willing to give an example of what, that 30-second commercial might sound like?
Oh, the whole 30-second commercial?
Yeah. Yeah.
Geez, well, we've only got about 20 seconds. So whole 30-second commercial for me is depending on the circumstance, right? If it's a cold call, I will start with something like, "Hey, Jim, John Vanderslice." Depending, I rotate it, right? Name probably doesn't mean anything to you. Looking for a little bit of help here, Jim. If I could just maybe take 30 seconds, put a little context around why I'm calling, we can figure out if we want to hang up or keep talking. Are you open to that? 9 times out of 10, people say yes. I think with a 30-second commercial, you can have fun with it. Sometimes I'll say, Jim, this is a cold call. I know you're excited, but if you'll just give me 30 seconds, let me give you context around why I'm calling. We can figure out if we should keep talking or you can just hang up. Is that okay? I think you have to find something that's comfortable for you. But when you end up the talk and I go through the 30-second commercial of the pain points, whatever those things are, the question I will typically ask is, Jim, any of those things even on your radar screen, or do any of those things resonate with you even a little bit? 9 times out of 10, because I know the pains that people suffer from, the answer is yes, all of them, right? So that hook question at the end of the 30-second commercial, once the person gives me those 30 seconds and I go through and I talk about that, we'll work with people that are frustrated that they're just not getting enough new business in the top of the funnel, or they're frustrated because they have a big pipeline, nothing's moving, right? And I'll give a couple more. Jim, any of those things even worth a conversation or on your radar screen? And then they'll say, yeah, all of them. And then we'll
then we can prioritize from there.
Yeah. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Love it. Thank you for that. That puts us right at 1 p.m. Appreciate it if you're still on the call with us. Give us indication of what you took away from today. Hopefully this is helpful in crafting a good 30-second commercial a la elevator pitch for you. As always, we're here to help. If you want to go a little deeper on this, reach out to myself here, reach out to John in the Jersey, Philly area, and Tim way out in the Republic of Texas. We're here to serve you. So we appreciate you dedicating some time with us. Good to see you as always. We will be back next week for another Wednesday grab and go growth tactics session. Gentlemen, excellent 30 minutes together as always.
It's a pleasure.
Good to see you.
All right.
Yeah.
Talk to you soon.
See
Great.
you soon.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Jimmy.
everybody.
All right.
Bye, Tim.
See ya.
Bye, everybody.
All right. Bye. Take care, everyone.